Now we're going to talk about the impact of generative AI on our brains. And I'm going to share you my presentation. It's called BrAIngym. You can see here two figures. Here one is physical gym, and here you have a BrAIngym. And it is based on the thesis and the more recent evidences that Gen AI can transform the way we think, feel, remember, learn, and make decisions, and not in a positive way, but in a negative way. So this is all about how can we continue working with AI and use AI without losing any cognitive competences. If you look at what's happening and what's reported on in the press, there are more and more stories where people, and especially young people, are losing thinking skills, cognitive skills, attention skills, because they delegate many of the tasks they do today to artificial intelligence systems like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. Well, you know the big ones, yeah? And it's not only that this is appearing in the press, but also there is more and more scientific research that evidences this. You can think about this in the sense of we used to know many of our phone numbers by heart, but since we are now using mobile phones for almost 30 years, we hardly have any capacity anymore to retain phone numbers. Actually, if you lose your phone, the probability that you can even call your very close family members is not so big. And we have kind of outsourced. Of course, we need to still remember things, so we haven't lost that capacity to retain things, but definitely certain things are harder to recommend. Now, what is BrAIngym? BrAIngym is a cognitive training, and it's designed to strengthen our mental capabilities that may be weakened by an intense use of generative artificial intelligence. Of course, we're not talking about a week or a few months or maybe a year. We are talking about 15 years of using this technology and systematically offloading cognitive capacity to an external computer, and that might have, of course, an impact. And there is more and more research on that. One of the famous recent reasons is what MIT did. So they had 3 groups of people that had to do a task like writing a report or an essay. There was one group who just got pencils and paper. There was another group that you could use search engines, and there was another group that could use Gen AI or ChatGPT. And while doing those tasks, they measured brain activity through instruments, and also they did an after experiment interview about how much ownership people took of the content they wrote or they produced in the different situations. And the results were as you would expect. So the more people that used AI had significantly less cognitive activity, or let's say brain activity, than the other people. And also the agency or the retention of what they actually had written was much less in people that used AI. People that used search engines versus people that only used pen and paper, there was not such a big difference, which means that recovering information, but still you have to do something with it, is of course requires more cognitive effort than using Gen AI. Now, BrAIngym is called because there's an analogy between traditional gyms, physical gyms, because we all go to the gym because we want to continue doing our work, which is mostly sedentary work where we sit behind a desk or a computer 8 hours a day. Of course, it's not healthy to do it, but we have to do it because that's our job or activity. So in order to stay healthy, we go to the gym. Now, likewise, we think that with cognitive offloading of difficult tasks like summarizing, analyzing, critical thinking, If you do that on a systematic basis during many years, then in order to do that safely, you need to do something else. You need to keep exercising your attention, memory, creativity, autonomy, critical thinking, and that's the notion of a BrAIngym. Yeah. So it's not that we have to do away with AI. AI is here. It will be there for many years. We have to use it because otherwise we are not competitive in the labor market. But in order to do it safely, we invented the concept of BrAIngym. It's not a completely new concept, but it is more resonating much more today than a few years ago. Now, what we've done so far. First, we did a literature study of new articles on the negative impact of cognitive competences. Yeah? So the MIT study is one, but there are more and more appearing. We also did interviews with experts, so 6 neurological experts who know how the brain works, asked them about potential impacts and what could we do about that. And then we did a literature study on exercises that stimulate cognitive competencies. Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of literature already because people with dementia and Alzheimer, they all have this problem of impaired cognitive capabilities, and they do all kinds of exercises to maintain them active. Yeah. So we did all this study, and then we came up with a number of exercises that could form part of what we call this BrAIngym. Yeah? And of course, then we made a balanced selection of exercises. The result of this is a methodology that we call, it's in Spanish word, it's called apetece. It's means like feeling like. So I feel like dancing, or I feel like doing some sports. In Spanish, you say me apetece, etc., etc. Yeah? And that's actually feeling like something you like to do is contrasting with desired difficulty that you need for learning and cognition. Yeah? So our brains are by definition and by evolution, they are lazy because if they have to work, they consume more energy. So if there's an opportunity to do less, they will do, because that's evolutionary, is that a smart thing to do. But in order to learn, you have to do this difficulty. You have to suffer a little bit, and that's what the desired difficulty that you need for learning and cognition. Yeah. So we looked at this apetece methodology. You see here the words. The A is for attention. The P is for critical thinking. In Spanish is pensamiento crítico. E is for emotions. The T is for taking decisions. The other E is for experience, creativity, and ethics. Yeah? And there are then also 4 aspects of each of those dimensions, which is cognition, agency, emotion, and ethics. Yeah. Now, based on this framework, we looked at all this literature, and we looked for exercises that stimulate certain aspects. Yeah? So what you can see here is a total for the whole methodology, a total of 46 exercises, yeah, that stimulate your brain, your cognitive activity in some way or another. Of course, there is overlap. Some exercises are good for many different things. But so in the attention module, yeah, it's to sustain attention. Things like sports, Lego, mindfulness helps to improve attention. There is an emotions module. It's about some sports like playing darts, or even sports, even ping pong or football. Critical thinking. The objective is to, of course, to think about things that people, that you read, that you hear, that you see, to understand, is this really true? So to have a critical opinion, yeah, differentiates facts from opinions, fake news. If we go to decision making or taking decisions, it's all about, again, yeah, you can't imagine that if you do a certain sport like ping pong, how many decisions your brain has to take in microseconds, yeah, in order to not only hit the ball, but also give it a certain direction and give it a certain spin, etc. So it's a lot of activity in your brain if you do those sports. Darting, even the way of how you stand and how you have your balance if you throw the dart itself is a complex interaction of brain activity, which is very good, and scientific literature tells us. And then the experience module, yeah, that is doing things like activities where you're really into a flow, like making, writing something, or cooking, or making music. Creativity, of course, is also there, and the ethics part is also there. Yeah. So these are all activities that have scientific literature, where there are experiments that show that there is a positive impact of doing those activities on some parts of the brain. Yeah? So this is the whole, let's say, the toolbox that we have investigated and studied to see what could be part of our BrAIngym, yeah? So our mental fitness center. Now, we want to build, yeah, a physical BrAIngym. So we are looking for a place where we can have a room to deploy some of those exercises related to the methodology. Yeah? So for attention, there are several exercises. For critical thinking, there are for emotions, for taking decisions, for experience, for creativity, and as well for ethics. Yeah. Now, we think it's important to not have an app or only a digital experience to train your brain, because we have to also get away from the screens. And so this is a snapshot of what we would like to build. Yeah? What I will do next is a bit how would it look like. Yeah? So imagine you come into this room, and then you come to a certain place where activities focused on attention, and there will be like 3 or 5 between 2 and 5 activities for each of those letters, where it will like be explained how to do it. Yeah. So for instance, here you have a Lego. It's called Lego with instructions in order to focus your attention. And here basically what you have to do, take a very simple Lego place and follow some instructions on paper and build, yeah, build the figure or the object of the box. Yeah. It is time boxed, so there will be a sandbox, a watch, yeah, also physical, and then during 10 minutes you can practice. Yeah? And the idea is that afterwards you ask yourself certain questions, yeah, to reflect on the activity. But just doing this for a period of time will focus your attention. Yeah? This is one, Lego. So what you will find in this room is a card, yeah, a kind of sheet with this kind of information. And at the end, there is a QR where you can see the references of the why is this good for your brain. Of course, that's academic literature, so not so easy to digest, but still, it is all based on science. Yeah? Reading, of course, is also important. We hear that people are less and less reading and watching more and more small, brief videos. Here the idea is that we take some column, a not so easy column from a newspaper, can be very short, but then read it with attention and then ask yourself some questions about it. Yeah? It trains also your brain and your activity and your attention. Attention has there are also fun things like paper folding, origami. Yeah, some simple instructions. Actually, this is spatial, so it's a bit more difficult. But also, really, you have to focus your attention to do that. And also, knitting, yeah, is very important. Of course, maybe if you can't knit, you can learn it here. There's also a combination of physical things, manual things, and your brain things, because you do have to think about those things. Take it into account. I mean, if we have a BrAIngym, you can't be at one activity like for 2 hours. Yeah, in a physical gym, that doesn't work because everybody is looking at you and waiting for you to finish. So we have to be short. So time pressure is also a way to stimulate this desired difficulty. Critical thinking is about listening or reading some short narratives and then asking some questions about what is the perspective, what is it about, is it really true? Yeah? So it's really about exercising your brain to question what you are reading. Also, fake news, critical verification, very important in the world where we are now. Here, the idea is that you play a game. It's a game where you are invited actually to create misinformation and fake news. And that gives you an insight of how fake news work. And by doing that, it learns you to detect the aspects of how you can be helped by detecting whether something is true or not. The important part is that you have to think while you do this game, and meanwhile, you also get some interesting learning from that. Emotions, of course, if you miss the bull, you're frustrated, you have to deal with that. And apart from that, darting is very good for all kinds of activification. So like, as I said, balance in your body at the same time as aiming very clearly with your eyes and deciding how your hand moves, etc. A lot of complex interactions really stimulates your brain, but also the emotional part. Just Dance, who doesn't know that, originally from Nintendo, where you just have to follow figures on the screen and to imitate movements, which is quite difficult for some people, such as for myself, but also a lot of brain interactivity, and also, of course, a lot of fun. Notice also that some activities can be done alone, some can be done or have to be done together. And this is one of the more social activities. Taking decisions, of course, who doesn't know Scrabble and Rummy Cup? One is with letters, the other is with numbers. Again, playing those things, these games, you have to take a lot of decisions, take into account a lot of facts that you have, and then do something. And again, you have to do it quickly. And that stresses your brains even more, and this is this desired difficulty. Playing ping pong, doing also many good things. Of course, to have a ping pong table in a local requires a certain surface and a certain amount of space, which we are not sure we will have. But there is an alternative which has the same good characteristics, which is table football, which you actually can play with 4 people. And is also very good for your brain, for taking many decisions, and again, coordinating, thinking, social, and and physical things, which is very positive for the brain. Of course, music is an immersive experience. We will also have a guitar where you can learn in 10 minutes a famous song like Stand By Me from Benny King. Not very difficult, but of course, if you haven't done it ever, it will take you some activity, both again, physical, manual, and also your brain to remember how you have to put your fingers. And also it's really fun, and maybe also it can stimulate to start learning to play the guitar. Creativity is about modeling clay or drawing. Again, simple things, but there is ample scientific evidence that this is good for keeping the brain active. And finally, ethics. This is not even the whole picture, but all of the things that we want to have in the BrAIngym, but it is a subset of it. So this is an ethical thinking. You probably know all the tram dilemma, where you are the driver of a tram, and something goes wrong, and you have to decide. So you have to kill somebody or something anyway, but you have to choose. Do you prefer killing cats and dogs instead of people? Do you prefer killing older people or younger people? How about thieves or criminals? Maybe that's easier to kill them or not. So this is about exercising your brain in taking ethical decisions. It's not important what decision you take. What is important is that you have to think about, evaluate very quickly in a certain short period of time. It's a very interesting game. It has already been played by millions of people. It's from MIT, and you can play it very easily by connecting to this URL, moralmachine.net. And actually, it's interesting to see how over the world there are differences in decisions, these ethical decisions that people take. So this was just an overview of what we want to do, where we are today. Today we want to build BrAIngym version 1. The objective is not so much to have a BrAIngym where people can come and do a lot of exercises and come back and improve. It's to raise awareness, yeah, about this issue, which definitely is an important issue, yeah? Especially if we use this during many, many years, yeah? and more even for young people. Yeah? So it's about raising awareness and to test the appetite of organizations, institutions, whether this is something we should do as a society. Yeah. So the objective here of this version 1 is that we want people to come just for once, institutions, media, to see whether, to taste what it is. We will want to build this toolkit. So this toolkit is a number of sheets that you say of each of the activities with scientific backup. And in the end, it is something that is completely written down, and in principle, you can use it anywhere. Yeah. Also, if you looked at the contents of the BrAIngym, many of them are quite cheap. Yeah. So will cost you maybe a few hundred euros to set up. Of course, a table tennis table is a bit more expensive than Scrabble, but many of those things you can also buy second hand, and then it becomes even more. Feasible. Yeah. And we do want to have a physical location because we want to have a sign that says BrAIngym in order to attract attention. And we're thinking of having a mobile version where we have all the ingredients and we can go to a school or another institution, set up in the local room there, and then have it there for 3 days. So people, children from the school can go there, or other kind of institutions. Yeah. Again, raising awareness about a potential upcoming problem that we might have. Yeah. If you look at the impact of social media today, there are many positive impacts, but also many negative impacts. This is about raising awareness of potential negative impacts, and then before it actually happens, trying to mitigate that risks. Yeah, which is at the heart of the mission of OdiseIA. Yeah, it's about thinking about what is the potential negative impact of technologies and try to mitigate it before it becomes really a big problem. Now, of course, this is just the first phase. The next phase, if we are successful in the first one, we want to scale and implement. So we think this could be a business. Like today, people run a gym, yeah, a physical gym for fitness. We think there might be an opportunity to run a mental gym in the future, and therefore we want to test that. And of course, that means that we need to enhance, yeah, what we have, because it's not just one exercise. It's one type of exercise with different levels of complexity. Of course, with some things you can do that, but with others you have to think about it. And then people can have even a coach, where they are, based on their situation, they are guided what is the best exercise to do. Notice that many of those exercises you can also do at home. Yeah? You don't have to go to the BrAIngym for many of the things. So even if you internalize, then you could do it. Even though many of the things of the gym you can also do it at home, yeah, the physical gym, and people still go there. But anyway, so that's a possibility. And then we're thinking of licensing or franchising the idea, not necessarily for profit, yeah? Maybe for Creative Commons, but to have it, because setting up a BrAIngym in Spain is as easy as setting up in Germany or in the United States, yeah? Because it's a simple concept. And if there is interest and appetite and the need, why not? Yeah? So this is where we are. Today we've defined the BrAIngym ingredients as you've seen. We're currently looking for a place where we can actually install it. And we still have a few months to do it. And then we probably will test whether the idea and the concept, minimal viable product, is strong enough to continue. We have some information on our website, but it's still early days. And well, I think that was it. Thank you very much.